This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Anson's Chair. So, I am getting ready to go to the GalaxyCon here in Richmond, which is taking place this weekend, which this is March 24th. Yes, March 24th. I had to look. March 24th. So, the weekend of this weekend, I am going to be at the GalaxyCon. It's going to be my first convention in 30 years. I went to two conventions almost back in the early 90s, one with Gates McFadden as a special guest, and the other one with John Delancey as a special guest. And this one will be the first major con that I've been to. So I was hoping to go to the Las Vegas Star Trek convention last summer, didn't make it, but looking forward to this one. William Shatner will be there, Jonathan Frakes, Gates McFadden, Nana Vister, Walter Koenig, and Terry Farrell. I think that's everybody. But they'll all be there, so that's going to be awesome. There's a lot of other special guests: Vincent D'Onofrio, Charlie Cox from Daredevil, David Tennant from Doctor Who. So a whole lot of cool people are going to be there to see. So I'm really looking forward to it. But I've been working on printing up some parts for this 1250 Reliant. And I've had a lot of time to work on it because the resin I got, I bought some navy gray Soraya Tech resin. I've tried multiple different settings. I just can't get it to print worth a darn on my M3 Max. So it's been printing very, very nicely on my Photon Mono X. So I've been able to print up these parts on my Photon Mono X using that resin for the 1350, but the part I need for my Bird of Prey to finish that up is I need to reprint my wing that my lovely wife stepped on and broke. So I've got that resin on order. It should be in probably early next week, and I can get those reprinted up and finish that up. The good news is that I now have a local job here. I won't have to be going back and forth to Denver anymore. So hopefully that means I can focus more on getting these models done, putting out more videos, and getting things moving along at a little bit quicker of a pace. So I just want to mention, some people have asked about whether or not they're going to be able to get, I'm going to put these files out. I will at some point put out these upgraded files, but just be aware that you're still going to need the game body files, because I'm only going to put out the upgraded parts, and that's not going to include all the parts you need to build this model. So you're still going to need the game body files to complete this model, but I will at some point put out the upgraded files. Keep an eye on these videos, because you need to know if you're going to buy into this. I'm probably going to put these out, but I'm probably going to look to get something back for the work that I put into this. Probably like $5 or $10, not a lot. I'm not trying to make a lot of money off this. I just want to get something back in return for putting my work into this, which is why you need to buy the game body files, because this is based off of those files, and I want them to get their money as well for the work that they put in. So you're talking about, I think the game body files were $35, so another $5-10 you're into this model, $40-45 for the files. So not expensive at all. But that's further down the road. I've still got a lot of work to do on this. I'll talk about that more as we look over the parts I've printed. So without further ado, give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. right, so let's start with the back and move forward. So this is the back left section. I've also got the back right section printed, but what I need to go over is the same from both sides. You can see I've got that modified. Now these little indentions, these slots here are not on the studio model, but I decided to leave them in. If you don't like them, you can always fill them in later and sand it smooth. But I've decided to leave them in there. And I do have the openings in here now for the lighting around the edges here. And that's not on the base model, so that's something I've modified and added in. Now there was some sanding to get this flush because where I modified this, the edges weren't quite flat. So there is some sanding that needs to be done. You have to sand all over this model anyway. It's a resin print. This one I'm probably doing a bit more sanding on it than you will for like if you do it as just a standard 1/350, because now that I've blown it up more, made it bigger than what the print was intended for, some of the poly count is low, so you'll notice that some of the round edges aren't as smoothly rounded as they would be. So I'm having to go in and sand those smooth. And other than that though, this part was pretty easy to do. I had to sand some on here to smooth this out. And I've just got a base primer coat on here right now just to look at. It shows up any, you put your base coat of primer on, it shows up any of the flaws that you need to work on. I've still got some more sanding I need to do in some spots. Where I sanded this little edge down here, I've sanded a little bit too much. Now I got a little bit of a rut there I'm going to have to sand smooth. So other than that though, not a difficult part to work with. I have opened up these vents, which are not open in the standard model, but they are open now, so that if you want to light these, you can. I always thought when I watched the movie that it looked like there was a little bit of light coming out of these, and when I did my 1.537 Reliant years ago, I actually lit these up with a soft blue light, just a little bit of light coming through, and I thought it looked nice. So I'll probably do that again on this. And but all the windows are correct. They look good from the print. And the only thing I've noticed off a little bit is this one triangle over here is just a little bit higher than this one on the left. It was already higher. Actually, maybe in this one I moved. This one was way higher than this one, and now I've moved it to where it's a little bit lower, but that's not bad. It's just you can notice if you look at it that this light, there's a little more space here than there is on this one. So I'm not too worried about it. It's not that big of a difference, and I may even be wrong about that. Let me see. Let's take a measurement here and see if I am correct in this. That measures, that's sitting about 3, and that's sitting about 3.5. It's not that big of a difference, so not too worried about it. But these are all opened up. These are all opened up for lighting as well. I have put in these spots for lights because as the model comes, the lower section that I have yet to print yet, that goes on the bottom here, they had the lights down there, and it's way off from the studio model. So I moved them up here. They should be right off of these edges. So that's fixed. But other than that, the rest of it's just sanding it, and that's it for this part. It's pretty easy part to deal with. Not a whole lot of work to do to get it sanded smooth and all that. So we got that part. We also have the impulse crystal deck, which goes right here, and that's already opened up for lighting, which it wasn't on them as the model comes. It's not, and it's also this part here around the crystal is totally inaccurate on the model as it comes. So I've changed that out and corrected it, and all you got to do now is run some lighting, do some light blocking, and this will light up nice. I also had 2 openings on either side for the red lights that go on here, but because I made the size bigger than what it was intended for, these holes were way too big. They're also too centered, whereas if you look at the studio model, they're more out towards these points here on each side. So I filled those in with resin and sanded them smooth, and I'll re-drill the lights closer to where they need to be and at a smaller size that's more in scale. Because as this is, these would have been, I probably would have fit 3mm bulbs in there nicely, but it's way out of scale for this size of model. So Filled those in, sanded smooth, and I'll move those holes further out here. Whether or not you want to deal with that's up to you, but that's that part. That part was pretty easy to do. I had to split this in 2 parts to get this to print because again, my M3, I could not get this resin to work on it. So, but it split nicely right along this edge here on this box, and should be pretty easy to fill in and sand smooth. Shouldn't have any problems there. So again, if you're printing this at 1/350, this should fit in its entirety on a Photon Mono X. You shouldn't have to split it at all. But again, because I'm splitting this, because I'm printing this at a larger size, I had to split it. So some of these files, this whole model, you should be able to print on something similar to a Photon Mono X. As far as I could tell, it seems like when I had the parts in the box on my Lychee, it seemed like they all fit in there. So, but let's take a look at, move forward a little bit, take a look at this BC deck. So the BC deck was totally inaccurate as the file comes. I've gone in and corrected it. The windows are correct. I've even added these holes, which I'm not sure what these are because you don't really see any light come out of them. So I'm not sure what these holes are for on the studio model, but I put them in there. So they're all in there. And just a couple of things with this. There was a little bit of a lip around the bottom here that I'm having to fill in and sand. I still got a little more work to do on it. There shouldn't be a gap in here or a seam visible here. This should be smooth to the hull. So I'm working on getting that sanded smooth. Had to do some sanding on the top because there was a little bit of a ridge here from where I removed the old bridge from this, and it just had to sand it smooth a little bit where there was a little bit of a ridge on top. And then on the sides, towards the back here, there was a little bit of an artifact. I don't know what it was from, but I had to sand that smooth. But again, a lot of sanding, not a big deal. I did have to fill in these 2 windows that I forgot to fill in on the 3D file. I'll have to go back in and fill those in on the 3D file yet, but easy enough to put some putty in there, smooth it out. The only issue I'm running into is, you can see I broke one of the frames for the windows back here, and that was when I was removing these supports. I wasn't careful enough and I broke it off. I have reinforced these already in the 3D file, so these are now reinforced and they shouldn't break as easy, but still be careful when you're taking your supports off to make sure you don't break these. So I don't want to waste all this resin, so I'm going to try to fix this first. If I can't fix this and this issue here, which I'll talk about in a second, then I'll just reprint the file, but I really don't want to waste all the work I've put into sanding this and the resin I've used to print this. So we'll see if I can get this fixed satisfactorily first. This grill here is just a matter of I made the cross beams too small on here, and you can see they really, most of them just didn't print right at all. Some of them did, some of them didn't. So I'm going to take this out. I have fixed this as well in the 3D file already. So I will just remove all this and I will print up something to slide into place in here. That's more correct. So this is fixed already in the 3D file. Again, these are reinforced in the 3D file, so that won't be a problem for anybody else. And then at this size, I did have to do some sanding to make this smooth around the edge here because, again, poly count wasn't high enough to make that smooth for this large of a file. So just be aware, if you try to do a 1/250 like I'm doing here, you're going to have a bit more work to do than you probably would with the 1/350. So, but other than that, I'm also going to be working on an officer's lounge to put in here to light up. So got some work to do on that as well. But again, not too bad as far as a first print and a test. So turned out pretty well. So now let's take a look at the saucer sections. So this is the first section with your sensor that I printed. You can see again, this is kind of thin, and when I was removing the supports, I broke it. So I'll just reprint it. It's not that big of a part. It doesn't take that long to reprint. So I'll just reprint it, but this part slips into here, and you can see that there's a little bit of a gap here. And that's fine because this actually does not appear on the studio model. This seam here is what I want. So what I'll do is I will fill this in anyway with putty, and then I'll take my scribing tool and I will rescribe this seam straight along here, because that's the way it should be. But the way the Gambody file was, this part jutted out here, and it was nowhere near accurate. So this one here, I don't know if I can get it to show up on camera, but the poly count, this is really one of those spots where you see how low the poly count was. It's not smooth at all here, so I'm going to have to sand this smooth to get it to look good. But again, not a big issue, not a whole lot of sanding involved there. This part again will just drops into place here, and I will glue it in place. And like I said, putty here, sand it smooth, and it'll be good. As far as the hull itself, now these phaser banks are, it looks like, yes, they are open. You could run fiber optics to light these up, or you can totally sand them off and redo them if you want. But I'm leaving them all in the file because, you know, it depends on up to you what you want to do with it. But again, some sand to do. I got a little bit of a notch for some reason right here that runs across the saucer section. It does it on both the sections I printed, but it's not deep. I'm gonna have to do some sanding anyway, so that'll sand out when I do the sanding. You can see, if the camera picks it up, these two panels I added in, and there's a smaller one. I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but there's a smaller indented one that I put on as well. So those are in there, and there's another one up here as well. May have to do some etching with that, because this one doesn't show up too well. So when I go to sand this, it's probably going to disappear. So a little bit of work to do there. I've got a little bit of a lip right here where I took out what was here before. I don't remember what was here, but it needed to go, so I took it out, and there's a little bit of a notch here. So, but that doesn't matter, because again, low poly count. I'm going to have to sand smooth this curve on this edge here. I do have the gangway doors, the docking doors on the saucer section I added in that weren't on there, and the windows are also added in, which should be correct. So this band here, I am going to fill in and sand it smooth, and then I'm going to add it back in after I assemble the saucer section and the hull, because this band actually goes into the hull towards the back. So I want to make sure I get those lined up. These aren't even the same width, if you can tell. This one's a little bit wider than this one, so they're not the same width, so I don't like that. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to fill these in, sand them smooth, and then I'll add these 3, and there's only 2 bands, it's supposed to be 3, there should be another one here. I'll add that in after I get everything assembled. So, but the windows look good. Let me grab this other section of saucer. And once we put these whole sections together, there is our proper windows. Those bands actually lined up pretty good there. But you can see the windows are like they're supposed to be. The Gambody file as it came was totally wrong. They had the windows like over here, and they were different configuration than what they should have been. So these are correct now. They will line up nicely, and should look good when I get it all together. Can't wait to get this together and see what it looks like. So, but that's it for this section. Then on this section here, you have the thrusters, the RCS thrusters. I have actually had to use my my etching tool here to emphasize the triangles here for the thrusters, because they weren't very deep as they were when I put them in. So you may have to do some work there, and again, sanding this edge to where it's rounded and not so squared looking, and then some more sanding under here. But lots of sanding, but that's pretty much it. Just a quick overview of what I have done so far with this. And these parts line up here, and then our bridge section, our BC deck, will go here. So that's the way this goes together. Let me see if I can get this in here. Yeah, not quite, but you get the idea. That's pretty much how this will go together. All these sections go in, and then I've got this whole section here, which I've got to print, but that has to be printed on my M3 Max because it's too big to print to fit at 1/250. It's too big to fit on the Photon Mono X. But again, if you're printing this at 1/350, shouldn't be a problem. So, but anyway, guys, just a quick overview of what I've done so far, what I'm working on with this. It's coming together decently, pretty much like I expected. I figured there was going to be some work to do, and I figured there was going to be some corrections that I had to make to some of these parts, just based on the scale. So, but anyway, that's it, guys. I appreciate everybody for watching these. Thank you guys for subscribing. Please, if you haven't subscribed and you like what you see or you're looking forward to this build, go down, click that subscribe button down below, and also you may want to hit that little bell icon. That way you get the notifications when I put out these videos. But again, give some love to my buddies, my comrades at arms, Cass over at Lake Monster, and Gus over at G-Cows. They do marvelous work. I can't wait to get some work done with this. I know Gus is working on some stuff for my bird of prey, and he's also going to be working on some stuff for this model. I will probably print up a couple parts in 1/350 so he can scale these. So that way, if you want to build this model, Gus will be looking to work on the decals that'll go for this model. So make sure you show those guys some love. May also get some cast parts from Cass. I haven't talked to him about this yet, but hey, Cass, may need to cast some parts, especially the clear parts, for you guys that don't want to deal with printing in clear resin because it can be a pain in the butt. But anyway, keep an eye out for those updates. Again, thank everybody for watching. Till next time, keep modeling.